It's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, everyone. So that's it. We said goodbye to FPL 2023-24 in interesting fashion, with one last blast on the final day, which had the sting definitively taken out of it football-wise, but there was a lot to play for in fantasy football. And we were there at meet. I got far too drunk for a Sunday, and I'm ashamed to say it, and ended up ghosting out really early. Took a really long walk and had to eat loads of food to make myself more presentable when I got home. Always eat, kids. But yeah, really great time at FPL meets. Hugely recommend you go along. And yes, we're back here on a Tuesday, a day off for the inevitable after effects post meets to analyse the palaver and put a button on the season that was. Joined, of course, for the final time of the season by Sam, who was proudly wearing his Saints FC colours on Sunday and no doubt looking forward to next weekend. You're right, mate.
Yeah, very good, thanks. FPL Meets was absolutely unbelievable, as per. Really, really good fun. It took the sting off of what was a pretty average to negative day FPL-wise for me, but I've kind of forgotten about that the second the game's finished and everyone was just having a good time together. So yeah, couldn't recommend it higher if you're on the cusp of maybe going for the first time next season. Definitely get involved. Lots and lots of fun. And of course, Southampton getting to the playoff final on the Friday was fantastic too. So plenty to be happy about outside of the just slightly outside of top 100k finish in the end. But we'll take the learnings, we'll take the lessons, which is what all this pod's all about, of course, and apply that to next season and come back hopefully a stronger manager. Especially in my case, not so much yours because you did all right on the last day, as I'm sure we'll go into. In the meantime, though, we are Who Got the Assist for the final time this season. On today's pod, it is, of course, the last pod of the year. There's lots to cover off. Game week 38, how did we do? How were our seasons generally as well? A bit of a review on how it all went down across the year. A few key themes from 23-24 as well to help guide us into what might happen next year, as well as, of course, a Bold Claims final update alongside the mini league standings and our end of season awards, of course, as well. It is Tuesday, the 21st of May. No football is happening, especially live, because that can get a little bit tough sometimes whilst doing these pods with goals going in all around us. But for now, shall we do scores on the doors, Tom?
Let's do that. I think we do scores and doors first, reflect on 38, and then maybe sort of roll into our seasons after that. Otherwise, it might end up with a very, very long tranche of one person chatting. So, me first then. I had a very good fun day. 97 minus 4 rank up from 128k to end up 81k. Final flourish as the highest rank of the season. I broke the hoodoo of watching FPL live with people and always having really terrible experiences, I mentioned last week. So Mateta and Salah captain came in for Isaac and Kevin De Bruyne, plus 6 point difference. Isaac, we heard all sorts of leaks in inverted commas on Sunday about him, but I was pretty happy to kind of go with Mateta and go against that. A place that I've entered on the captaincy, I mean, I think we were talking about it quite a lot during the week. When the reality was differential made all the difference. So in particular, Mateta obviously a 20-pointer and Dallo 15 points as a real quiz. So I was watching with you, and when that news came through, I honestly felt mildly embarrassed. I'm going to try to hide behind you actually when that happened. When that went in, he had absolutely no business being in the position he was in. United should have lost the game. It was, it's jammy as hell, but I will take it because obviously I'm chuffed to finish top 100k. I think I just about deserve it, but I did everything I could to get in my own way, particularly over the last kind of few game weeks for a couple of mistakes we'll touch on later. But yeah, no, it is what it is. Just had to take a big gamble against the herd, and it didn't happen with the captaincy. But lots of other things went my way, and even removing Isaac, who got a 14-pointer, didn't punish me. So yeah, I think it was good to have all that luck kind of coming in on the final day. Porro, I'd obviously owned for quite a while and purposely kept in way back in game week 30. Son, I think did he get a goal, get an assist, something like that. Foden with
Can't
15.
remember now.
Yeah, no, yeah, who cares? Foden with the 15, the ex-player of the year. God, if only we'd listened to ourselves. And yeah, elsewhere, like Palmer, Jackson, etc., and so on and so on. Yeah, big story, obviously, Dale and Mateta, and then Salah, I think, got an FPL assist with the captaincy, which was obviously quite nice. So yeah. 81k, top 100k finish. I know it's a 78k on the graphic if you're watching on YouTube, but I've just realised I should update that photo. Never mind. Yeah, always the aim these days. So yeah, pretty happy with that, and can go into the summer feeling okay. What about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, just 1 second. Massive congratulations. That is an incredible final game week. I'm sure anyone listening knows you've kind of been through the run of it this season as well. So to come out of it with that sort of week that like brings all the variants back to probably neutral to where you should be. Yeah, you massively deserve it. And yeah, that's an incredible score. Definitely finished the season on the high there. So well done, mate. And Cheers. I am saying that through gritted teeth because I did not have a fantastic final game week. Although it wasn't catastrophic. I just didn't make the gains I needed to. Didn't take a hit. 66 points, which felt, I think, maybe a point or two below the average at my rank. Obviously, the most gutting thing of it is I had all of the components to have a top 100k finish in my team. I just didn't use them. So I benched Isak after the rumor that he was himself benched or not even in the squad, apparently.
Yeah.
Made the transfer. I think I was outside with you at the time at meets.
Yeah.
Made the transfer with you and Sim, I think. Bringing in Elise for the injured Gordon. We were fairly confident on the Gordon news, and because we had negative news on Isak as well, I thought, fine, I'll just put him first bench. It can't possibly hurt me, he says, laughing through gritted teeth whilst crying. Started Elise, obviously got an assist, but didn't haul like Eze did, and that's kind of a lesson I want to come on to a little bit later on as well. But yeah, Elise in himself was a decent enough pick, just didn't quite haul. And Isak starting, as soon as we saw that he was definitely starting, I knew it wasn't going to go well. A penalty taker, especially when Wilson wasn't playing either. Once we got that news in, it felt pretty damning, and of course it ended up being that way. So yeah, I annoyingly worked out if I'd switched Jackson and Isak, I would have had a top 100k finish just.
It's horrible.
But these things happen. We take the leaks, and I acted on it. I shouldn't have as early as I did, although it was 10 minutes till deadline. So maybe that's another thing to take into next season. Like, how much do I trust certain leaks, especially from an account that I literally never heard of before that, and it kind of just spread like wildfire, and we all just took it for granted. But yeah, that it is what it is. I used that information myself. I have no one else to blame. And I finished outside the top 100k for the first time, I think in 5, maybe 6 seasons, which is really, really frustrating. But I made mistakes this year. And honestly, looking back, I don't think I actually deserve to be top 100k based on some of the decisions I made. So I'll take it all and learn from it, and hopefully come back a slightly improved and more sensible manager next season for the pod.
Oh mate, I mean it was so close. It's so marginal. As you say, it's just a few little decisions here and there.
It's minor things. Yeah,
it's not. I'm interested to hear what you got to say about Elise and Eze, because I think that the prevailing tailwind before the game week was like Elise, the flair pick, the one who's going to come through, and then it turned out to be Eze. I mean. I don't know. I mean, I think Isak and Jackson was always a very close call at any point during that week. And yeah, as you said, all it would take is a tiny particle of information just to sway your decision making. And it's just, I'm glad that you seem like you're okay with it. I'd still be having nightmares about it if it was me. But I think that you probably maybe got more mature mindset about FPL than I do, or at least I kind of these days.
Southampton being in the playoff final helps.
Yeah, maybe. I think I'd be reaching for at least my daughter's, here and life is good card.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
absolutely.
no, it's agonizing, but maybe in some ways it could be the beginning of the next thing where, as you said, there are little lessons that you can take from this. And I'm really interested to kind of hear where you've gone with it.
Hmm.
No, elsewhere, I do think you had a very good season, like, in lots of ways, and we'll talk about it in a second. But it's all about sort of responding to not the best start in the world, and I think that, for rightly or wrongly, we ended up both in a situation where we were within striking distance of 100k, and it's just come down to the coin flip on the day, how it's gone for both of us, which I think is obviously, ideally neither of us would have been in that position. We'd have both kind of been happily nestled in the top 50k, and just kind of thinking, oh, you know what, fine, I'm just buying Havertz and being done with it. But that wasn't the case for us, and I think, giving ourselves a fighting chance of getting to top 100k by that point. Yes, okay, ideally, we'd like to be in striking to the top 10k, top 1k, top. But within the context of where we were, I think we played it as well as we could have, really, especially bearing in mind the really kind of difficult start that we had. But yeah, I mean, it's just those small little things on the final day which does it. And at this point, with the game so overly saturated and so bloated, I mean, just outside 200k is absolutely fine. Like, maybe kind of a few years back, you'd be thinking, "Oh crap, that was really bad. That's a blemish on my record." And hey, I had 5 of the 5 blemishes on my record before your fellow Saints fan Lucy pitched up. So upwards from here. And yeah, I'm really interested now to kind of hear kind of the lessons, really, that you've kind of taken from it. So I think we're going to do it. I'm sorry if you're listening, it might get a little bit specific here to our situation. We're going to try to obviously generalize as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, sure.
But I think there will be kind of a few sort of individual sort of bits and pieces. Plus, it's the end of the season, friends. Indulge us. Just let us talk for a bit, because it's definitely kind of worth doing. And hopefully, maybe when you do get around to think about FPL again, if this is like the final sort of burst of energy towards FPL, where you just forget about it for a while, maybe this will help you kind of think about your season a little bit. So what do we get right? What do we get wrong? I already kind of started verbalizing it a tiny bit, but I think, we I think, because our teams are tracking quite closely, that's the reason I'm using the we a little bit. But I think we did enough right over the course of the season. I think we both, I think at the start, we got to kind of game week 6, game week 7, didn't we? I think I wildcarded in game week 7, you went wildcard in game week 8.
Yeah, I'd one
and that was
after. Yeah.
we were both sort of in the millions at that point, which got the season back on track. Most of the season was spent 300k, 400k, just battling through a morass of
Weeds.
quite
Yeah.
beige teams, and finding it difficult to get differentials off. But from there to peaking at the right time, I mean, the overall arc of the kind of the trajectory is obviously where you want it to be. It's just that, obviously we want the arc to be slightly higher on the y-axis, basically. But I mean, I think the start really was kind of the main thing. I mean, is there anything that you've got on that? Because for me, I think, especially next year, we kind of started to talk about it a little bit a couple of pods ago, with the lack of doubles, that, I mean, to be fair, it's neither double has been great for me. I got a red arrow in the big double in 37 that I planned ages for with the bench boost, and I got like a fairly decent green in the free hit in 34. But without those doubles, I think it's going to be, I don't know, I'm still in two minds about it, Sam. I can't tell whether it's going to be a good thing, because we're not going to have all this palaver about wild carding to figure out your bench boost in a few weeks' time, or and we're not going to be sort of narrowly focused perhaps as much on one big week anymore. I think there's probably going to be pros and cons, but that lack of recoverability means the start is really important. And maybe, to me, it means we can't kind of afford a start like we did last year, although albeit the wild card did sort of change things, didn't it?
It did. And yeah, to focus on the start, especially that first 7 or 8 game weeks, I had a look back earlier, and I did kind of forget just how bad it got. We both started off really well. I think we matched each other on points the first game week. I think we were at 200k after the first week. Really good start. And then every single week, for me at least, was a red arrow until I wildcarded. So that was 7 red arrows in a row, I believe. And I didn't take a single hit during that time. I for some reason, I just had it in my mind that, don't worry, it will come good. Just play it safe, be cautious. These are good picks for a reason. That they haven't just stopped being good picks in the end of season break. They're still decent, but a lot of narratives changed quite quickly this season, and a lot of very cheap players came through and were providing value early on at a point where maybe I shouldn't have been so stubborn early on. And I do play a cautious game, and I don't want to remove that from my psyche for next year, because I think a lot of very strong players have come to the fore this year and they're not going to disappear next year. So the likes of Watkins, Palmer, obviously Saka's going to still be very important. But I think I just got a little bit too fixated on one or two key players and just backing them no matter what I was seeing on the pitch and stat wise. Like the Rashford drop off, for one, was massive. Like immediately we could see that he wasn't quite at the races. Whether or not the stats were quite proving that to be the case early on was kind of a different matter. And there were also new managers that came in big clubs as well. Obviously Chelsea with Poch, and you've also got Postecoglou at Spurs. The styles changed, and I wasn't quick enough to react to those things. I don't think I was still playing it just a tad too safe, and it put me behind the masses who were jumping on these players after 2 or 3 weeks worth of backing the eye test and maybe a good couple of weeks stat wise. And I just wasn't willing to take those risks and even take a single -4 to kind of cover me off against some of those risks. So that's one lesson I'd like to learn for next season, to start us off, which is not to be too worried about taking a hit if you know that your team's in a bit of a bad situation. Because what happened for me, at least, and I'm sure you'll agree or be similar to me, is by the time it got to game week 7 or 8, it wasn't just 1 or 2 hits that was needed to get me back to where I needed to be. I needed to hit the wild cards because I was so far behind the forming template and just draining 10 points a week on the template. And there were just so many great picks that were clearly going to continue being great picks at that point that I was just nowhere near. So yeah, that's one thing that I want to be a little bit more, I guess, instinctive in those first few weeks and leave myself open to changing my mind a little bit more. Know that there are a few players that probably aren't going to go anywhere, especially pen takers. But outside of that, I think there is more flexibility, and you've got to have your ear to the ground a little bit more as to how the winds are changing a bit, and see what you can do differently in the early weeks to set you apart.
Yeah, I mean, early weeks, you're completely right. Like, I think there's historically been a reluctance, at least maybe even a snootiness about, player X has scored a goal in game week 1. Oh, we really need to get on him. And then you're kind of thinking, but last year he wasn't really doing anything, and we haven't got any data. But yeah, you're right. A lot of the time, you can have. There's categories, aren't there? There's Granit Xhaka scoring getting like a double-digit haul for a couple of corners on game week 1, and people piling in him being the first price rise. Obviously not in the league anymore, but a player like that. But there's also sort of, I don't know, like let's pick out a random, or maybe next year like a Muniz or something like that. Say they've got okay fixtures for them, but they start off like a train. And in the first game, he goes off and gets a brace, and they're doing something slightly different. Maybe they've got a new signing who's kind of changed the dynamic of that team. I'm not saying obviously that every case is the same, but on a case by case basis, there's definitely more sort of giving yourself that space and that sort of freedom to maybe take a hit game week 1, game week 2, game week 3, and not get too sort of caught up perhaps in kind of because we've got loads of time to think about it before. FPL seems to launch earlier and earlier, so you've got more and more time to solidify your thinking, which is
heads up. It just got launched now, by the way.
Oh really? Oh shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would surprise me, but not massively.
Not that much.
But like, I think that there's definitely space to be more reactive early on, because it's based on nothing. Like the models are drunk, for obvious reasons, and it's always better to be more open to taking those hits early on. I mean, I think for years and years it was always kind of the classic leave at game week 1 or 2, roll into game week 3. And maybe this year that could have been done a little bit differently, because I think by game week 3 we were looking at all sorts going wrong. I'm looking at my team now, it seems scarcely believable. It's obviously, this is massive in hindsight, but like Rashford was still in my team and so on and so forth. So
Martinelli as well, right?
No, he was. He started. As Saka, Martinelli. We'll come on to that.
Yeah, we'll come on to that.
Yeah. But I mean, it is going to be one of those where next year, if you get the start wrong, I think that wild card, that first wild card, is again going to be a lot more important. And you're going to have to kind of think that the recoverability, as I said earlier on, is less and less later on in the season. So you're not going to be able to kind of just think, oh, I'll be saved by the chips. You're not. Who knows? It might change. I hold no hope whatsoever that it will change, by the way, but it may change, and we may see that they do something slightly different. But yeah, I think getting in on that, and as you said, maybe keeping an eye on as well the fact that these pen takers, these talismen aren't going away, and I don't know, not gathering too many aspersions, I guess, about them. If I may, I've got another learning for me. And I think it's the ultimate one for me this year. So I think I'm just thinking about it kind of spontaneously. There were 3 sort of really big mistakes that I made this year. The first one I've spoken about a lot: selling Somnus over Trippier in game week 10, which meant I got Martinelli over Saka. So between game weeks 10 and 19, when I owned Martinelli, he got me 1 return, just 1, a goal versus Luton, and was subbed off in almost every game that I owned him for, bar 1 for Trossard, of course. Fortunately, Saka didn't punish me any further. He only got 3 assists and 1 goal in the same period, so he was a little bit quiet. I'm not going to calculate losses there too much because there's too much kind of butterfly stuff involved here.
Yeah.
But there's 2 mistakes I made recently, mistakes in inverted commas potentially, which can be more tangibly counted. So Barnes over Gordon game week 33 was trying to be different, and I ended up with a player that I wasn't going to want realistically, and then had to crit that transfer at the cost of 4 points while also hitting him in. So considering Barnes scored 3 the week I brought him in, and Gordon scored 17 in the 4-0 victory over Spurs, then I removed Barnes immediately for Gordon after the free hit and 35, and I took a hit to do that. The whole escapade amounted to cost me 22 points. So horrendous overcomplicating, and arguably as well Kevin De Bruyne over the Gvardiol at the end. So Kevin was looking like a force again at one point. We spoke about the edges and so on and so forth, but again, getting him over Gvardiol, the swing is pretty big. So 36 and 37, Gvardiol scored 33 points, KDB scored 14, took a hit for KDB when I didn't need to, so 23 points lost there. Swings around about, I guess, because I wouldn't have played Dallo this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a butterfly effect going on there, because
I'd argue you'd be okay with it, But overall, just these are just examples of a few sort of bad decisions in inverted commas. That cost me 45 points in total. You could caveat pretty much. You can caveat all of them. And I haven't done the working out for the one in game week 10 because it's just pointless. But I'd easily be in top 50k if I had just done those things, which seem quite recent. And I think the key point that comes down to, Sam, and something that I think we did very well during the course of the kind of the climb back up from where we found ourselves. But the key point for me is keep it simple, stupid. And I did that most of the season, apart from in those occasions. I'm sure there's a few others I've forgotten about, but those small moments stick out like a sore thumb in my brain, just because they are ones where, for whatever reason, I think we spoke after game week 10 that the process wasn't that good, and I think kind of going Barnes over Gordon was trying to be a bit too showboaty potentially. KB or the Guardiol, I can forgive myself that one a bit more, just because it kind of made sense as an edge, right? But those small moments stick out like sore thumb, because Guardiol wasn't a hit; it was just an easy sort of move in, for example. So I think it just highlights again the importance of keeping it simple, and it's just so easy, especially if you're in a bit of a chasing situation, to think, "Oh, I'll go for the ultra differential," when actually sometimes just getting the player who, at the time Gordon was only like 10% owned, and I bought 1% owned player just wanting to be different. But against what? I would be so many more points up. Gvardiol was still a decent kind of edge for a lot of people in double game week 37. So. I think keeping it simple again is it recurs in my sort of like content creator. I really hate that term, but like the time I've been doing WGTA, like that's a recurring thing for me, that I've just kept doing that. Last year, I think I went even more. I was even blander. But I was beyond bland. I was like, white bread with the cross cut off, because I was doing stuff like not captaining Mitrovic in that double game week. It was stuff like that. I just was incredibly boring. And last year, there's a reason why that kind of works, because I got my best finish. So yeah, I think sometimes it is about maybe keeping it simple a bit more, being a bit more sort of considered. Perhaps I think towards the end of the KDB point, I can kind of forgive myself that because it's getting towards the end of the season, you might as well go for it. But during the season proper and when we get towards sort of that area where I know the kind of the player that I want in the Barnes versus Gordon thing, um, I need to be a bit more considerate in terms of just thinking what's a simple option here and how much am I screwing myself over, in the long run, and trying to. It's difficult to anticipate the butterfly effect, isn't it? But just trying to kind of have that element of simplicity around the game, which is very easy to overthink. I think is something that I need to kind of refocus on again because it's just been a bit of an Achilles heel for me over the years, and it almost cost me a top 100k finish this year.
Yeah, I mean, keeping it simple, stupid is one of my main takeaways from this season as well. So it's funny that we've landed on a very similar one. There's a number of times where in this season in particular, I think I've panicked just a little too much and gone on tilt, thinking if I'm going to muster a finish I want, I need to move now. I need to make a difference now because the template's so strong. And even though I think around game week 30, 31, I was still preaching, saying just calm down, it's going to be fine. I still went too early, even if I'd never taken those sort of calculated risks, I like to call them, then I would have been in the position come game week 38, probably 13, 14 points ahead anyway, and also could have just kept it simple in the final game week and stuck with my boring suggested transfer of just making a keeper move, kept Isak in the starting 11. And again, I'd probably be looking at 50, 60k rather than anything else. So yeah, keeping it simple is something I want to take into next year. And I think to kind of extend that learning a little bit, I've been trying to assess why I don't keep it simple sometimes. And I think hopefully a few people listening can relate to this, but I'm a bit of a romantic at heart when it comes to football. And I like the sentiment. I like the narrative behind some stories. And sometimes I just want something to be the case so much that I'm like, it just weighs too much on my mind. I'm like, I like the romance of this story, this one player coming through. I back him to have a breakout season, or I back him to get a hat trick against his old club, or something crazy like that. Or like last game week of the season, I back Elise, for instance. These sort of things are maybe the reason we play as well, because I don't want to lose that altogether, because that's half the joy of it when one of those comes through. But much more often than not, I've noticed it just weighs into my decision making just that little bit too much. It factors in just too much, where it clouds my objectivity, and the decision becomes slightly too subjective based on factors that don't actually have any tangible weight to them. They're very much subjective, airy fairy things that just don't actually mean anything. So that's one thing I want to learn for next season. As boring as it might be, try to remove that sentiment in the decision making, and only in true 50-50s do I even let that become a factor. And I think if I have a more robotic approach in that sense, then I'm going to more often than not get the right call, even if it's not the most romantic or exciting one.
Oh, it's so easy to get caught up in it, isn't it? And you also, I mean, we're going to talk about it on the pod every week. And if there's this sort of snowball effect online, and also through the content you listen to and consume, you can unconsciously get influenced and swayed towards a player like so easily. In some ways, it's like the inverse of what I was talking about in terms of going for an ultra differential. It's kind of going for the next hot thing every week. And although that can, if you accuse someone of doing it, then automatically that makes someone kind of feel a bit defensive and and can be kind of a bit, I guess it can be taken as negative. Like we all do it. Like we're all going to be doing stuff like if Sterling and Gusto go mad against Luton, they've got a good few next fixtures. Of course, we're all going to be looking at buying Sterling in. Of course, we're going to be looking at buying Gusto in. And there's going to be one or two people who are just like, oh yeah, Raheem the Dream, lol, as if. But I think that fundamentally herd mentality is real, and can also have a very big impact. And a lot of FPL is putting itself in position to get lucky, and the flip of that is trying to not put yourself in a position to get unlucky because if you do, it's always such a tough such tough balance to strike, isn't it? Between kind of thinking, oh well, I think this is just a bit of a lemming situation that everyone's kind of falling over a cliff to buy this player, and I just don't think it's worth it. Versus kind of thinking, oh well, if everyone's going there, then the EO is going to rock up, and then if they do keep doing stuff and become a Danny Ings or a Jesse Lingard or something like that, or an Almiron, then I'm going to look like a right idiot, and I'm getting him next week for 0.3 million more.
Yeah.
So that's the quandary I think we always find ourselves in. I think you're right to think about maybe puncturing the romance a little bit, and I think a part of that is taking yourself back out of the Twitter sphere. I definitely have the last kind of few years. I'm not saying you are, by the way, but I think there definitely are a lot of people who are get a bit caught up in what's going on online and what content creators are saying, and so on and so on. But so I think it's always good to kind of take a breath and try to do your own sort of independent work, which I know you do with your spreadsheet and things like that you've got through the season. But I think that's kind of good general advice to try to take a step back. Sometimes I suppose if you aren't that engaged, I don't know whether you listen to it. I don't know how many people who aren't that engaged have listened to this, to be fair. But if you're not that engaged, then, probably it is a bit easier just to kind of go, well, Praz is going there, so I'm definitely doing that. But I think if you are kind of a bit further down the rabbit hole, it's always good to kind of build in a bit of kind of reflection time, if you can, within your transfer process.
Yeah, absolutely. It is worth noting, by the way, if Praz is going there, it's probably a good decision. He's a bloody brilliant manager.
Oh, absolutely. Every time. I'm not besmirching.
Yeah.
Praz
just an asterisk, just to make sure, in case he's listening and thinking we're digging him out. No, absolutely not. It's the opposite. He's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, completely agree. I think another learning that kind of relates to this is I want to start doing the work myself next season before I take in anyone else's opinion, because I think what I've done too many times this year is because I love consuming FPL content. I watch it constantly on my commutes. I watch it before I go to bed. Like all of this, I watch several podcasts a week. I watch a lot of single person YouTubers, and I read the written content on Scout, for example. But quite often I will let that all absorb before I even come to my own conclusion or come to my own outline of what I think is best as another person who's making FPL content. And I think what I need to do from next season onwards is reverse that process a little bit, do the research myself, and then start consuming the content as a bit of a sense check more than anything else. Like, have I missed a factor? Is there something tangible that I've not taken into consideration? For example, as a player that I've not considered on set pieces, and therefore they're going up against a team who are really weak against corners, something like that, or against several teams in a row who are really weak from corners. That kind of thing that I could miss will be why I will get value from FPL content next season. But I do feel like at times, especially in the Christmas period, I got a little bit lazy where it's such a tight turnaround. I'm like, right, I don't really have time to work through this all myself. I'm going to go to the pods and just immediately take inspiration, and almost all of my views come from other people that week. And I really want to guard against that, because one, like I back myself as a decent manager. I want to make those decisions myself because I think I can do well. Obviously, if I'm wrong, then it reflects in my rank. But yeah, I think that's another learning for me. Like, almost make a note of what I think is best at the start of the week, and then at the end of the week, check to see if anything has actually tangibly changed, or whether I've just let like Twitter opinion absorb into my psyche, and I've blindly gone along with whatever the prevailing wind is suggesting.
Nice. So yeah, a few little bits and pieces there. I think grade wise, I think I'm going to give myself if I'm giving myself like an A- last year, I think this year has to be like a B-, maybe a C+.
Okay.
Did the basics, got the top 100k finish, which I think has got to be the aim for any manager, like the minimum aim every year. But I think there's definitely a lot of Fs in my in some components of my decision making, which obviously is worn on the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm close to giving myself an F just for the -16 last week alone, Tom, to be honest. But I'll be a little bit more generous than that. I'll give myself a D+. It's not where I'd want to be at the end of the season. So at the end of the day, managers are judged on results. I haven't got what I wanted, but there were little redeeming factors every now and then that I think takes me above an F or an E grade. I think it wasn't a disaster. Small tweaks don't completely change the process, but hopefully next season I'll learn from those and bump that up again a little bit.
Yeah, no, it certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I know I don't want to be endorsing a D plus, but I think that's definitely fair for the situation you found yourself in. So, cool. All right. So a few kind of just muses, I guess, on the season that was. I'll be doing a bit more of this during the summer. I will be doing Talisman Theory again. I'm also thinking of kind of splitting it into two and doing kind of a state of the nation of FPL sort of thing as well. The Talisman data, I'm still waiting for my AI to work all that out, and I need to do all the stuff with my friend Mitchell will do most of it for me, to be fair, and I'll just do some formatting afterwards. But I'll do that. But I think the state of nation stuff is always quite interesting just to have a look at the end of every season, and I'll go over this. I think I'm doing it on all about FPL again this year, not the website anymore, obviously. And I think that it's really good just to kind of give an initial look at the data, I guess, that we've kind of got from this season. Sorry if this turns anyone off. I'll try to be as quick as possible and try to get to the point rather than going through all the data. But yeah, a few kind of headlines from what I've looked at so far. So the 200 Club, there are 7 members of 200 Club this year. That is the most since 2019-20. And it's gone up incrementally every year since the fallow year, which was 2021, when only Fernandez, Kane, Salah and Son got the 200 Club. This year, that Palm was top point scorer. Who was second, Sam?
Saka? Would that be
Foden.
right?
Foden
was second. Wow.
He was indeed. And then third was Watkins. Fourth was Saka. Fifth was Haaland. And the other two?
I know Salah hit 200.
He did.
And then who are we missing? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Second appearance in the 200 Club. Salah has been in the 200 Club every year since he joined FPL,
wow,
which is just incredible, really. So 7 this year.
Sorry, one quick asterisk there. He's only been top point scorer in FPL once in the last 5 seasons now, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, I know. But you're taking out the 2 seasons before that when he was.
Yes, I am.
Top twice.
Most recent 5 seasons is a pretty big sample size.
It is, but I mean, it's not that far off every time.
No,
I think this year is the furthest distance that he's had. I think that's not true because of Haaland last year. So yeah, I mean, it's not that bad, and the total points scored as well by the 200 Club has climbed up exponentially too, as you'd expect with more players within it. If you look at the kind of the cohort below that, so the 100 Club who have scored over 100 points, 100 to 199. Again, the numbers are kind of fairly stable. I think it's like kind of 1% more points have been scored by players who have scored 100 plus this year. That includes 200 Club overall, so fairly healthy there. But there is one kind of little thing that I'll look into more during the summer, which is the players who have scored more than 50 and up have actually declined. So it kind of suggests it's a 5% decline overall. I won't go into the numbers because that's boring in a podcast format. But what that kind of shows, at least, is that with all of that going on, you only got 148 players this year doing it, a real fall off over the last 3 years amongst those picks. What that shows is that there's a real sort of concentration of point scoring at the top of the game, which has happened over the last 3 years. It's not probably enough to kind of call it a certified trend, but it's directional, and it's really interesting just as kind of a start point to show that those differentials within weeks, those little sort of little pockets of individual kind of spurt, don't really seem to be happening as much in FPL at the moment as they used to. It means the field's also narrowed in terms of players that we can pick. But overall, the pitch is pretty healthy. So you've got loads of players who are still kind of scoring over 100 points every year. And you've still got loads of, and you've got a rising amount of players who are scoring over 200 points every year. And that is probably a good thing. I think probably end up kind of stabilizing. And 2019, 20, 2018, 19, we had 8 players scoring 200 points both of those seasons. I won't ask you to name them, but it was the likes, even though Mane, Hazard, Vardy, Aubameyang, and so on and so forth were kind of all occurring in those time frames. And I think it's always really healthy for the game that we have loads of players who are in 200 club or able to get into the 200 club. It's just the pricing which could affect that. So if they next year don't provide adequate upticks for a lot of these players who are in the 200 club, or at least kind of harmonize it, equalize it enough, and make it, as some of us suspected was the case this year, they were just kind of catering completely for the people who disappear by game week 5 and allow them to pick all the players that they want. If there is kind of, we see Foden not get a drop like he did the year before last, despite playing in more games and getting more points. If we don't see kind of, if we see like Saka after 100 club finish, the second one in a row, not getting the uptick that he deserves. If we see like a few of these other bits and pieces not come together, then again it will be a bit silly. But I think that hopefully the fact that there are loads of players scoring pretty highly this year, we are probably going to see hopefully there be a bit more choice next year. This year, with everything being quite level in terms of the pricing, hopefully next year, if they do sort of kind of create choice, and I think they're going to have to, because there are so many players who, I mean, put it this way, if they don't raise the prices of a lot of these players, it's plainly obvious what they're doing. They're just trying to make it up. They're just making it so your less engaged player can just choose who they want, which is fine. We'll make our allowances within that. And there was loads of howling of indignation at the start of this year, and we all had a lot of by the end there was a lot of choice, to be honest, and there were loads of different ways to play it, and that's kind of what we'll find a way of doing it. But yeah, it's just something to watch out for next year, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would be quite surprised if we didn't see a number of players around the 10 to 10.5 price mark next season, considering a lot of those 200 club members and the ones just below as well were 7, 8, 9 million this season. I think we'll see a much bigger pool of players around the KDB area in terms of pricing, which will be quite nice because it's like that sub premium category, and it means that you've got more of a decision to make on structure rather than like individual players that fit into a system for you. You can actually have maybe 3 or 4 of the 10 millions, or maybe 1 or 2 of the proper premiums. And yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see. But obviously, we don't want to dwell on that too much yet without any pricing. And obviously, we're 2 months away from any pricing being announced. So yeah, we'll move on from that for now, I guess. But yeah, I'm personally really excited to see how they map that out this coming year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think not really linked to pricing too much, but still touching on it. One of the big things that we saw this year was not going to call it the death of the defense, but the decline of the defense, I guess. Big at the back, completely irrelevant. We've said quite a few times that we weren't particularly interested in going wild with really expensive players. I know if you look at it now, you think, there's loads of expensive defenders who are over 5 million, but realistically, it's been one of those years that until Arsenal emerged as a valid option for doubling, it was poor, to say the least, at the back.
Yeah,
Trippier had flashes just before Christmas and he got injured. Trent obviously had a moment, but we kind of saw that the midfield and particularly the strikers were back in fashion this year to a large extent. The likes of Jackson, it took him quite a while to kind of come into the equation. People might look at Isaac and forget that before kind of the very end of the season, no one really kind of gave a crap about him, really. But Watkins and Haaland have been part of the template for yonks. You had Solanke sort of in and around it, and you had loads of kind of different individuals who were in the mix at any sort of given time. Be it your kind of Carlton Morris's, or maybe even your Muniz's. Next year though, I wonder whether we will see a swing back to defenders. So Arsenal, valid option. I think that, looking at the underlying data in terms of XGC, that tells you more than enough, doesn't it? Really, ended up with an XGC of 27.9. I mean, that is ridiculous, frankly. Less than a goal, much less, far less than a goal a game, effectively. And City were quite a long, also were under a goal a game, but kind of some distance back from that. And assuming there's not going to be too much personnel turnover, especially at sort of the high level for Arsenal, which I very much doubt, first team level for Arsenal, I suspect we'll see people kind of look there again. Same with Gvardiol, another player that I mentioned there, the new Cancelo for a lot of people, I'd say. I think he'll be kind of probably 123 points he ended on, but it wouldn't have escaped FPL's attention because they are quite recency led, and that he did a lot of points towards the end of the season. So I suspect that he will end up kind of, I think, start the season at 5. Am I right in saying? Same as Saliba.
This year was 5, I think. Yeah,
same as Saliba and Gabriel. So I would not be surprised to see him kind of punted up to 6.5. And if someone did at the start of next year, just especially if City and Arsenal end up with decent fixtures, did kind of throw in Gabriel, White, and Gvardiol, no matter what the prices are, I'm expecting they'll all be kind of 5.5 to 6. I don't think it's that difficult to see that happening, especially if you kind of, as we say every year, tabula rasa, just don't think about this as being as it will always be. And the next year as well, I think you'll probably see Havertz and Son as well reclassified as strikers too. So I think there may be kind of, maybe you'll see kind of 4-4-2 again in game week 1 being a thing. But yeah, definitely defence this year, Sam. It's certainly been an interesting sort of phenomenon to observe, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it hangs on the fact that Arsenal were just really badly underpriced at the start of the year, which just meant that big at the back wasn't a thing because you could get good value out of much cheaper players back there and just pile the money into the forward lines, especially when we're seeing a season that was a record goals tally as well. And I know a large part of that was Sheffield United, but there were a lot less clean sheets generally week to week than we've ever seen before, or at least in my memory. And Arsenal were the team that we could reliably count upon week in, week out for those clean sheets. They just happened to be way too cheap. So big at the back didn't really exist because, okay, that in part, but also most of the season, Trent and Trippier were either dealing with injuries or playing in sides at the time that just weren't keeping clean sheets. So they weren't consistently decent options. Each of them had a little spurt either side of Christmas, I believe. But outside of that, they weren't massively relevant to us. I think if they were for a bit of a longer period, then maybe our structures would have changed to compensate for that. But again, I kind of see it happening next season as well. Arsenal's defence aren't going anywhere. Man City will probably remain the second best defence in the league. And with all of the upheaval happening at Liverpool, Spurs aren't going to tighten up too much, you wouldn't imagine. Chelsea, obviously, after the news today, probably not too confident on them either as it stands. It's going to probably be much more of the same, but just at a higher price. So it'll be kind of medium big at the back with the same players that we would have picked last year for smaller or cheaper at the back anyway.
Things can change though, but no, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely can change. But I think those two defenses are the ones that we can be quite confident that they stick around for a fair while at the start of next season.
Perfect. Final kind of little mini fact for you. So this year, Sam, how many players do you think got over 20 non-pen XGI?
XGI, not XG.
Non-pen XGI. How many players got over 20?
I will go with 10.
Oh, yeah, close. So it's 9.
9. Okay.
Over that's interesting because over the 3 years preceding that, you only had 4, 5, and 4. So you had quite a few players entering those numbers. Obviously, the likes of Darwin Nunez, you kind of look at it and think, well, apparently Slot is really interested in working with Nunez. So we shall see Solanke hitting the 20, which is obviously very good. Watkins, who admittedly was not far off it last year, getting into that sort of score. But quite a lot of players just ticked over into that sort of category, one that I quite like just keeping a look on. And I think, again, that's kind of something that I just kind of noted today as part of my research, and I'll kind of talk about that more during the summer. Cool.
Nice.
Anything else, or happy to move on?
Generally, yeah, happy to move on. I've got still so many lessons I'll bring up over the summer and probably next season, but I don't want to be here for 3 hours, so I'll leave a few of them for next time for now.
Perfect. Cool. All right. So to the mini league, where is the trophy being sent? Well, it's been sent to Malawi, so that's going to be fun. I'll have to try to figure that one out. I'm going to just kind of just run through the top 10 really quickly. In 10th, just beating out our mate Snake FPL, unfortunately. It's some dude called Jack, FPL Jack, I think his name is.
Who's
I
that?
don't know. And this guy's in the top 30 for FPL
Well done,
managers
Jack.
of all time as well. I saw today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Big hit with the ladies. But yeah, so 85 points for Jack. Just got into the top 10 on the final day. Overall rank of 244. So not that shabby at all.
Wow.
Yep.
Well done, mate. Really well
In
done.
9th, it's Tony Gosh, 1 point ahead of Jack. Again, 78 on the final day, a final rank of 230. Again,
Wow.
really well done. In 8th, it's Gregor's Cloggers, Greg Hensman, another Brit, 195th. He ended up, unfortunately, as a Spurs fan, but we'll allow him that. In 7th, Erin Butler, Klops and Robbers, a Liverpool fan, 176. In the world for him. Outside the top 5, despite being in it for the majority of the season, it's Laurice Poost and his 46440 iPhone 12 Pro gang. 61 points on the final day, saw him finish 167th. I'm pretty sure he was in the top 100 for quite a while, so maybe a little bit disappointed, but still an amazing season, Laurice.
Incredible, yeah.
Into the top 5, Matt Heath, HTA Arnold, 72 points on the final day, 145 points for 145th place for Matt overall. Obviously, ridiculously well done.
Second,
I know. second Matt is Matthew Allen, Grand Haven Broncos, 137th. Matthew ended up in 3rd. Alexandre Fouing from France, 94th, top 100 for him. Amazing finish. And pips on the fun day. Jeremy Kalou from Belgium, 82 points, finished 82nd overall. But first, it is Timothy Miamba, 91 points on the final day, brought in Eze for Charlison. Prescient move there, Timothy. Played Isaac, benched Saliba to play Porro, I think. So that's really good going. Captain Son as well, so differentiates on the final day. End up 69th in the world, which is obviously a good number. Yes, Timothy, if you are on listening or if you're on X, either send me a DM or email us whogottheassist@gmail.com, and I'll make sure that trophy makes its way to you. I really hope you're studying abroad, but if it has to go to Malawi, it will go to Malawi. I will guarantee that. But yeah, well done, everybody.
Well done.
Wow,
really
what
well done.
a season for these people. Puts us to shame, doesn't it?
It really does.
Right.
Yeah, embarrassing.
Speaking of shame, to some extent, bold claims. Actually, no, there's no shame here. We've they're bold for a reason, as you said.
They're made a long time ago.
let's do the garden variety. Which one have you got first? The season or the garden variety ones?
I've just got the game week 38 one on here. So we'll have to just rehearse them for the pod. Yeah.
So we'll do the game week 38 ones, and we were both pretty close, weren't we? I mean, you were so close. I think at half time you kind of rocked over and just like, I'm so close. I can almost, I can do it. I can do it.
I was counting them up throughout because the game week was not going well for me. So I was like, instead, I'm just going to switch to getting 40 goals. Ended on 37, I think it was. It was a very high scoring week, and it would have had to be a record for the final day to get to 40. But we really nearly got there. There was only 1 or 2 games that really let me down. A lot of them were definitely pulling their weight. But yeah, not quite. But I thought that was quite a fun one, especially because we were watching it live. It was probably the most engaged I've been in a bold claim all season. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, unlucky.
Yep, and I did both teams to score in every game except for Arsenal versus Everton. Crystal Palace obviously with a 5-0, Liverpool with a 2-0, and Sheffield United with a 3-0. Spurs with a 3-0 against Sheffield United, and Man United with a 2-0 against Brighton. The Spurs Man United results obviously positively affected me, so I was more than happy with not getting that ball play in the
not too
final
many
day.
complaints.
Yeah, so 9-7 is how it ends. We will do it again next year, except maybe we'll think about a little bit of gamifying, I think. Or maybe we should kind of introduce some of our own chips there. And at the start of the season, something that we need to do better at actually checking in on throughout the course of this year, we actually made some season-long bold claims. If any of you have been with us since the start of the season, thank you very much if you have been. We made 3 each, and I think you said I've got 1 earlier on. I think I maybe got 1.5.
Yeah,
But
you're close to the second one. I don't know.
I had 3. So the tangible success was I had Watkins 200 Club as my bold claim, as my first bold claim, which obviously came true. And we both really liked Watkins at the start of the year. If I was more of a told you so merchant, I'd be putting that on X and so on, but it would never go anywhere anyway, so I don't tweet anymore. The second one was at least 2 of Bruno, Rashford, Saka, and Martinelli to stay in my team for 30 plus game weeks. Well, I mean, every year is different. So that was very much kind of in the moment based on what we'd seen the year before. Don't forget as well, we saw the Bruno price at 8.5 at the start of the year. Looked at his online data from 2022-23. I'm just like, wow, that's ridiculously good. Wow, he's definitely going to stay in my team forever. And same with Rashford, getting the 9. It is what it is. Martinelli, I'm not going to speak about him anymore. And my final bold claim was Trent to be priced out of teams. Now, I think that given how this year went, there's a case that is true. However, he did get injured. That completely derailed his season, and there's no way of really knowing if he hadn't gotten injured around that sort of Christmas period, if he'd been playing consistently for Liverpool during that time frame. I think that he would have been an option during the course of the season for players. So I'm not gonna claim that one. I don't think.
Yeah. I think, you probably would have wrestled harder on that one if you hadn't won anyway, but you have, so you can probably just relax on it. But I think the other thing that maybe just about saves Trent on this one is he was actually starting to come into a lot of people's thinking, and I had bought him, and a lot of people were talking about him just as he got injured. He had like 4 or 5 game weeks in a row where he was on fire, and people were bringing him in despite the price. And then literally immediately got injured. I think it was end of Jan, because I remember I went skiing when it happened.
Yeah,
I was on holiday.
Yeah.
So
it was before Bournemouth. I think it was before like Bournemouth or something.
It was the week I first captained Palmer again. I think it was against Fulham.
Was that in the split week?
Yes, it was. It was a split week. Yeah.
That was when I think Jota scored a brace that week against Bournemouth. That's the week he missed.
Yeah. So I think he was just starting to become relevant at that point, and I think if it wasn't for that little period, you would have had that point locked on. But you already won anyway, and I think that just about kept him outskirts of relevance. Although, let us know if you disagree, because we can give Tom another point. It doesn't really
tell you what, this is his worst year since he was a solid starter for Liverpool. Over 2,000 minutes, let's call it that. So I'd be really interested to see what they do with his price next year. Really interested,
especially under a new coach.
Yeah, I mean, we all looked at that price before we saw the other prices, and we're like, "Oh my god, that's amazing! That's so exciting!" Just to see him, price it a bit more expensively, it kind of makes it more of a question. And then, obviously, what happened with Liverpool. But yeah, next year, I think there's definitely going to be some. If he goes down to kind of 7-ish. Then I think there's definitely going to be a case for him as well, and maybe kind of further sort of reinforcing that big at the back sort of idea that I mentioned earlier on. Right, how did you get
on? Not so great. I don't think I get any of these. So first and foremost, let's get the Darwin elephant out of the room. There was some confusion about this during the year. So he did hit 20 returns in the Premier League. He didn't hit 20 goals though, which is what I said. So I did go bold on the bold claim. He did get over halfway there. And for a little while, I was quietly becoming more and more confident because he was playing well and he was starting very consistently. And then it just dropped off. I think there was an injury around game week 30-ish. And after that, he struggled to form a little bit, couldn't really find minutes consistently. And yeah, I mean, after that, even more so than before, he just couldn't hit a barn door either. So all of that kind of went together, and that is all a part of the Darwin experience. So maybe I should have expected that, but they are bold claims for a reason. So I thought I'd go big. Didn't happen, but there are still elements of enjoyment there because it was quite funny watching him try. Second was the one that basically became a dead rubber immediately, which was Chilwell to be the highest point scoring defender in pre-season, based on the data that we've seen from him previously, alongside the way that he was being played for Chelsea, almost as a left winger earlier on in the season as well. If he could have stayed fit, I think this one would have been much more interesting, but then he just got crocked for pretty much half, if not 3/4 of the season. So that just became wholly irrelevant very quickly.
Oh, he looked so good. He looked so good though early doors, didn't he? I
Yeah,
mean,
he did.
we were all targeting him. I mean,
poor man's Gavardio, I think they're calling him.
but he was in our squads early like game week 1, wasn't he? And he got I think he got 2 clean sheets in the first 3, and just looked like I remember I tweeted
goal scoring opportunities
that was
week.
it. He was in the box, you know, properly like at it, and we were kind of thinking, yeah, you know what, it's coming, it's definitely coming.
But then he started getting played at left wing and then switching with Mudryk every week. Like that was the error. Like if he's just stayed at left back, he probably would have been okay. But because he was playing left wing, it became like this competition between him and an actual left winger to start every week, and it just went downhill so quickly.
Yeah.
So that one didn't work. And then the third one that didn't work, although it depends how you term the word dropped, but I think this would be too cheeky. I can't possibly put up an argument for Ederson getting dropped for Man City this season. Again, I just had a bit of a feeling that Ortega is going to push him quite hard this year. He's a quality keeper, and if Ederson went through a patch where he was just letting him one too many, Pep might take a chance on Ortega and switch it up. Obviously, Ortega did get good minutes, but that was only ever because Ederson got injured. So I don't think I can give myself that one either. So that's 0 out of 3 for me, sadly.
Yep. All right. Well, they're bold for a reason.
They are.
It's a miracle that 1.5 out of 6 came true. So yes, we will go again. All right, let's go towards the end then. And it's the end of season awards. Obviously, they're not real awards. I've got nothing to give to people, and I don't doubt the players give a crap. But
they'll all be devastated.
Yeah, defo. But I think it's all going to be something which I suppose is going to hopefully just put a bottom of the season as per the point of the whole podcast. The first one, surprise of the season. I think obviously kind of go straight to Cole Palmer. I think there's quite a few of these categories that can go straight to Cole Palmer. But I don't know. Part of me kind of wonders whether the collapse of the defense and the number of goal scorers this season actually takes it. So no one in particular takes it, but the collapse of the defense overall kind of takes it. Allied with maybe Arsenal's defense as a whole taking this, because it has been an insane sort of turnaround for our defense from kind of the last couple of years. I looked at it earlier on. I think our SGC was kind of 40, so going down to shaving 15 off that, obviously linked to, I suspect, several key signings during the summer, and also Saliba having a ridiculously good season, as perhaps we'll speak about in a minute. I kind of wonder whether any of us at the start of the year could have seen that. I think we were all kind of, obviously you can't see it, but you know what I mean. Like, I think if you asked at the start of the year, what position do you think is going to maybe be a bit iffy? I think we're all thinking it would be kind of the forwards throughout the course of the season. So I think we all started with Gabriel, who became Saliba at the last minute. Chilwell, I think we both had Estepinian from memory.
Yeah,
But I think
yeah,
we were kind of thinking, there's always going to be space to bring in another defender, and there were loads of sort of bits and pieces. We're all expecting, as we spoke earlier on, like with Chilwell, I think we were both sort of jousting to try to get that bold claim that he was the top scoring defender this year.
yeah.
So I mean, I do think that kind of maybe the fall up, the fall away from the defense this season, maybe is one that I'd nominate. I don't think that's ever going to be. It's not going to stay like that. Next year will probably be completely different, and we'll see the defense kind of comes to primacy. Big at the back, maybe huge at the back will become a thing where we've spent kind of 30 million on our kind of free defenders or 3 or 4 defenders at the back. Who knows? But yeah, maybe that's kind of where I'd nominate actually as being the surprise of the season, because it has meant that we've gone a bit old school this year, and we've found ourselves kind of just piling money into the front again. They're aiding and abetted by Palmer being so cheap. So
Yeah, absolutely. I can't disagree with that at all. What I will add to that is obviously you started off with Palmer. Special mention to rewind back to that. The fact that a player can not be getting any minutes for City, barely, and then move to another pretty decent Premier League side, not only get a few minutes, but become their most important player, steal penalties off of his much more senior teammates, and make an absolute laughing stock out of that starting price, becoming the top point scorer in the game off of limited minutes. He didn't even start the season either. I think it was game week 8 or game week 9 that he started actually earning those starts for Chelsea consistently. It's just absolutely ridiculous what Cole Palmer has done this season. If he can repeat it next year, Jesus, I don't even know what superlatives we can use on him anymore. Just absolutely unbelievable. Some of the hauls that he's managed, flat track bully at home as well. So yeah, definitely surprise of the season for me. Special mention, outside mention to Gordon as well, who again came in very cheap. I think he got a lot of stick after the Everton move and maybe didn't find his feet too quickly. But Eddie Howe obviously saw something in him. He had a great campaign with I think it was the under-21s the summer before, and just hit the ground running and was absolutely indispensable for Newcastle from the off. So yeah. He gets a special mention, but honestly, look, for me, it's hard to look past what Cole Palmer's achieved, and these sort of things. Having a player that's that cheap come to the fore and outscore the likes of Haaland, Salah, Son, all of these proven FPL veterans, and do it so comfortably that by the end of the season he becomes the captaincy option in quite a few of the game weeks. Just absolutely incredible. So yeah, fair play to him. Your trophies in the post. Yeah, top point scorer in the game from a 5 million start, was it? So just
and didn't play quite a few of the first. Didn't play until game week 7, I'm going to say.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. Cool. Flop of the season. So this isn't personal against an individual. It's just kind of looking at FPL and how they've done. Going to nominate Rashford here.
I've got Rashford too.
Just because there was a lot of. I mean, I think 21-22, there were a lot of injury sort of concerns about him. I think he scored like kind of 63 or something like that. Next year he came back 200 club, first ever 200 club, and so kind of expectations were high for this year. And obviously there's a lot of sort of stuff going on around Man United, so maybe kind of that's happened. Obviously, there's a lot of shall we say, press, which is not particularly favourable to him for horrific reasons. But yeah, this year has not really been a good year for him, and not a halcyon year, that's for sure. 108 points, and despite playing over 2,000 minutes, for whatever reason, it's not worked. And I think the guy is great. Honestly, it didn't look this year like the player that he was last year. And just got hope that it's better going forward. And the other one that I was going to say is just Man United in general.
Yeah,
Some of the teams
that
towards
might
the end.
explain it.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe one begets the other.
Yeah.
Some of the teams United were throwing out at the end of the year, you look at it and just think, like, I think James and Planet said that if that team was kind of their actual team, they'd be battling relegation at least.
Mm. Yeah, completely agreed. And look, they have been very unlucky with injuries. They're not the only side to be very unlucky with injuries, but they have had to deal with a lot. And when you've got senior members or more senior members like Rashford also not really at their very, very best, again, nothing against his character whatsoever. I do really feel for him. But all of these factors combine, and yeah, it's just not been a great season for him, sadly. Hopefully, he gets back to his best next year. I think FPL's a much more fun game when you've got explosive goal scoring midfielders like him at their very best. So yeah, fingers crossed. He will almost certainly get a price drop again. So keep an eye out on that because he seems to be one season on, one season off. Wouldn't be surprised to be looking at him again by game week 6 or 7 next season. It really wouldn't shock me. But yeah, sadly, he was my nominated flop for this season because we had such high expectations of him based on the season before. Nick in the chat has just mentioned Trent as well. That was another one I wanted to mention. Again, probably a little bit unlucky because of injuries. And like I said earlier on, I think there were moments where he was just starting to get up and running and it looked quite promising. And then he just got that other injury and it just set him back again. So again, him and Chilwell were the two special mentions I wanted to bring up on with this section. I think they've been both unfortunate to be called flops because they've been unlucky with injuries and factors out of their control. But we're talking from purely FPL terms, high expectations, and neither of them delivered.
I want to talk about one other player here who has been in the conversation an awful lot this year, but I think by kind of game week 30, 31, a lot of us are kind of thought, screw this. I think it's all over. Darwin Nunez, so a player that we both kind of extolled the virtues of, finished second to Dominic Calvert-Lewin in terms of underperformance for goals versus minus XG, but I don't know. I don't know what really whether we're at the point now, and I think this is definitely maybe more of a football point than an FPL point. But obviously, it has kind of one bleeds into the other. You kind of look at it and you just think, oh my gosh, there's got to be a point where they've got to. Maybe he's not going to be the forward who is going to propel them to the title. But no, you never know. If Arnie Slot can crack the code, then maybe it will change. But yeah, definitely kind of a player this year that I think we both had kind of quite high hopes for.
Yeah.
And it didn't, for whatever reason. We always the data's obviously there, and it's always better to have a player who's taken loads of shots. Absolutely, I agree with that. But there's something around sort of finishing skill potentially or whatever, or within the moment and within the state of the finish and where he is on the pitch, and if he's got time to think about it versus not, which is something which is always sort of thrown out qualitatively. But FPL wise, definitely a bit of a. No, I think we both saw Watkins for him at one point. It's one of those things you look back on and think, why?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I had actually kind of maybe forgotten about him either non-consciously or on purpose because it has been quite painful. But yeah, it is a shame. I would love to see him become a real factor next season. But I think it's obviously every season that goes past, it becomes less and less likely that he starts to cash in on that XG. And yeah, sadly, just hasn't worked out this season on the whole. There's been moments. He's not been a complete disaster. He did get over 20 attacking returns, but yeah, when you can't combine that with bonus or any sort of level of consistency, he unfortunately probably does come into the flop category.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so goalkeeper of the season, do we just default to Pickford as being the highest scorer, or is there a call for Areola maybe?
Yeah, I mean, Areola for a time was looking really good for a lot of managers, and obviously came in at 4. So yeah, I think he definitely deserves at the very least a special mention. And maybe it's a bit of recency bias that we're not considering him more highly. But Pickford's end to the season was absolutely incredible. And when you combine that with the fact that even at the start, when a lot of managers went with him and he wasn't actually paying off for them, I think they can call themselves very unfortunate, because the data was still actually good at that point for Everton. It's actually been fairly consistent throughout the season. It just so happens that the returns ended up coming at the back end, when actually they could have easily come at any point during the season. And he's a goalkeeper that will almost certainly get a price rise up to 5 million now, but still wouldn't completely block him from my thinking. Again, a second special mention to Raya as well, who again didn't play all the games, can't even play against Brentford either. So got limited games, but still came out with the Golden Glove as well. So given a full season, he might have ended up competing with Pickford a bit more closely for points.
Potentially. The only bit about Areola, by the way, is that he scored 40 or 38% of his points in 4 games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very sort of boom and busty as a goalkeeper, effectively. But yeah, not really a house in the of goalkeepers. Those are the days of De Gea, being an auto pick and all that are pretty much over. But I suppose with Areola, at least you think of the season before with Iverson and Danny Ward. And you
Oh
kind of,
man, yeah.
we were treated with that 4 million goalkeeper every year.
Yeah.
Just strikes me that Martinez, for example, was so close to the 200 club, I think 3 or 4 years ago. A bit of a poor season for goalkeepers, and maybe next year we'll see more. But the dearth of clean sheets is everything for them. Defender wise, so maybe looking at Ben White and thinking, oh, he scored most points, therefore he's probably the best defender of the year. But I think Saliba has to be the one that you kind of look at and think, well, just been a mainstay in many of our teams. Obviously, we both kind of ended up removing him eventually, but a mainstay of many teams throughout the year. One of those players you could easily have just kind of loved and left for the majority of the season. I own White, as many of you remember, for a very long transfer gains where he did sweet FA. It was in game weeks. I think it was game week kind of 14 to. Christ, what we're looking at. I think he scored for me. Didn't he, against Sheffield United? And then, but I removed him just before kind of the final sort of flourish where he picked up a lot of his points, especially, of course, the 20 points versus Chelsea. Obviously did very well this year. Old Benjamin has a nice summer ahead of him where he can just relax. But I would give it to Saliba, I think, for this year, just because of the consistency. More than anything, White, there was a few sort of high variance kind of boom moments which have kind of pushed him to the 182. But I think that it's going to have to be Saliba. I think, last year it was a standout, wasn't it? It was Trippier, who was just 2 points off 200 club, if I remember correctly. But this year, I think I give it to Saliba, despite him scoring slightly less than his clubmate White.
Yeah, for that consistency, I think Saliba's the one that you can probably quite reliably just hang your hat on every single week, and you're pretty comfortable in the knowledge that not only could he get a clean sheet, but also decent attacking threat. Not quite the same as Gabriel's, but decent. And you've got the bonus as well, because he just racks them up much more comfortably. So yeah, Saliba was my bet too. I do like White, and I think maybe just because of your personal experience with him, that's coloured it slightly. But I think he wasn't. When I'm looking at my players of the season, I need to have like those good memories of them, and I don't actually know many managers who, outside of maybe that one double game week, was it 34 where he got the 2 goals and just absolutely popped off. Yeah. Outside of that, I think he's been more painful for most managers, despite scoring all those points, than he has beneficial. So yeah, obviously he's been fantastic, and objectively he has been the best defender. But I'd agree with you. I'd look at either Gabriel and Saliba and say, yeah, I've enjoyed owning both of them at different times this season.
Definitely.
And of course, Gvardiol at the end. So yeah, all
fun.
them.
Which defender, outright defender that is, so not like a Matthew Cash something, scored the most goals this year?
Oof.
This will come up a
No.
lot in preseason threads. It's Romero. He scored 5.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
scored 5. But yeah, I think it's like Pedro Porro. I think had the most attacking returns, if I remember correctly. I think it was like I think he got over 10. Yeah,
Okay.
I think he was the only one who got over 10
Trippier
this year
must have
amongst
been
defenders.
close with
I
assists, but
think so. I think there's a Sheffield United game, isn't it? Oh, I think maybe he got to. I think maybe he did actually get to 10. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So maybe him and Trippier got over 10. But yeah, no.
Mhm.
It's pretty fallow year. Midfield, yeah, Palmer.
Yeah.
If you aren't giving it to Palmer though, I think you've got to give it to Foden.
Yeah.
Which again, that's what everyone else did. Football writers of the year. I still come back to him getting a getting a price drop at the start of this season. Just think,
It's incredible, isn't it?
what are you doing, lads? But yeah, really,
That won't happen again.
what I do find interesting about Foden is the like his XG versus his goals. I don't know whether we're looking at a Son situation or whether we're looking at just a ridiculously good year. So 10.3 is XG, 19 goals scored, lots of obviously high quality finishes. If you think about kind of the goals, obviously
You
on the
can name
final
a few.
day.
Yeah.
Think about the goals versus Brighton that we didn't own him. Think about the hat trick versus Villa. High quality finishes, which I think is probably what accounts for the gap there.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's a little bit too early to just say that he's just a great finisher and we should just rely on him to overperform on the data every year. But there's a good chance that that could be the case, considering what we know about him. He is a mercurial talent. I'd almost go as far as to say a generational talent. Every time I watch him, he runs the show. I'm so glad he's now playing centrally on a consistent basis because he's really able to. He's able to turn in every single direction imaginable from the center of the pitch, and he uses that to his advantage constantly. Whereas out on the wing, look, don't get me wrong, he's got a place out there. He's the best player on the pitch when he is out left, but he can only impact in certain directions and in one-on-ones. Whereas playing him in the center, it just opens up so many different routes. I mean, I'm talking from a footballing point of view, but in FPL as well, like playing him in the centre has given him the opportunity to shoot from range more often, also play off Haaland a bit more closely. And yeah, look, they're going to lose KDB soon enough. I don't think they're worried, put it that way. They've got their replacement. He is absolutely fantastic. And if it wasn't for Palmer, we'd all be shouting from the rooftops about how great Foden has been this year, and he deserves all of the credit.
Yeah, I just hope that he and Kane have an understanding,
Yeah.
depending on who plays where. I do think, if Saka had not had fallow periods, we'd definitely be looking at him.
Yeah.
I also think that, if Spurs and Son had not had a bit of a kind of, we're pretty much done now, kind of towards the
Yeah.
end of the season.
Ran
When you're
out of
looking
steam
at
a bit.
one of the most clinical finishes in league history, playing as number 9, but it kind of got to the point where I think he's 31. He's 31 till he's 32. That's for sure. If anyone knows what I'm talking about there. But I think he's 32 over the summer. Maybe it's the case that the physicality of the league and him playing in number 9 sort of slightly caught up with him a little bit.
Yeah,
see what happens
possibly.
next year. He's in the last 12 months of his contract, etc., and so on and so on. But again, another bit of a gift this year with him being in that position, and he's almost definitely going to be a striker again next year, just to pad out that. And speaking of strikers, forwards, it's got to be Ollie Watkins, hasn't it? I mean,
100%.
there's absolutely no case to be made for anybody else. Like, what a season, honestly. I mean, we'll look back on this. I think if you can keep this up, then inevitably he's going to get a prize rise next year. I think that his selection in our teams is going to depend heavily on the fixtures. But one of those players who, thinking, if you're kind of in the mind of Eden Hazard, or in the mind of the kind of player you can just leave in your team for the most of the year now, if he can keep this up. And just think, he's going to do all right for me. It was 175 last year, 228 this year. I think he's got 160, 170 in there somewhere. Like, these are all decent numbers.
Yeah.
Third year in a row, he scored over 10 goals. I mean, this year's 19 and 18 assists, obviously. I mean, 18 assists, Sam, up from 8 the year before, and like kind of netting out around that.
He's not on penalties. He's not even on penalties, and he's still managing to do all of that. It is quite special, really. So yeah, I mean, he'll be definitely over 10 million next year, surely. So it'll be difficult to squeeze him and all of those midfielders we've already talked about into a side. But yeah, again, absolutely phenomenal season. Great shout from game week 1 that he's going to be a 200 club member, and maybe we shouldn't have been that surprised because he's got decent form for it. But this season he's finally taken that little step up under a great coach as well. Really interested to see how they cope with having Champions League, though. I think that will be something we definitely need to think about because it affected Newcastle, for instance, and I think Villa
they were in Europe this year, though. Don't forget
they were, but not in so much of a serious competition. So I don't know, like until the later stages.
They can't play the B team there.
Yeah, like in the later stages, obviously they take it much more seriously, but in the group stages, I haven't gone back and checked all of their lineups, but I'd wager there were a few rotated sides in there here and there.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's going to be really interesting, and I look forward to seeing how they cope with that. But they've got a great coach, and already looks like they're building for next season. So yeah, good luck to them.
Yeah, for sure. I think next year we'll definitely see that category become. Son will go in there. Havertz will go in there. Maybe even we'll see Mbumo go in there, for example.
Yeah, possibly.
Things will. I think there'll definitely be a lot more sort of going on there. Jota as well should almost definitely end up in the forward category again. That's his third reclassification in 3 years if he does end up there. So but we shall see. Depends on everything. And hot tip for next year, penultimate category. 2 for me. 1 is Trent, depending on the price, and the other one is obviously is kind of a bit of an obvious one, but Nkunku.
Nice.
So obviously not been fit, and absolutely no idea what's going to happen with him. But the kind of player, and I was speaking to Dan FPL Chancellor about this on Twitter briefly earlier on, the kind of player who just stinks of that individual who hasn't really played very much, and FPL just kind of think, oh, you know what? I think he was 7.5 at the start of this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down to 7. He won't go 7. He won't go 6.5. Maybe he'll stay at 7.5. Yeah. But like a player who has amazing pedigree, hasn't really shown it this year for obvious reasons. But one who, if Chelsea got good fixtures at the start of the year, I think could well be a surprise to some next season.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I want to go for a player that's not even in the league at the moment as a real left field shout. Dewsbury Hall at Leicester. I would be very interested to see how they cope in the Premier League again next year. He has gotten some ridiculous stats in the Championship this year. Obviously, it's a big step up. We've seen him in the Prem before, but he's added goal scoring to his game. He's gotten 15 assists, I think, in the Championship. And that's not counting things like FPL assists either. So I think he's got 27 attacking returns in the Championship from a more advanced central midfield position. And the way they set up does leave him in that kind of Lampard-esque late runs into the box, outside of the box kind of zone where he wasn't ever really in that before for Leicester. So interested to see how that comes together. And as a wider point, how Leicester come together in the Premier League next season, because they're very much a Premier League side that just happened to be in the Championship. They were incredible, barring 1 or 2 very small setbacks. As a fan of a Championship club, they were just a league ahead. So yeah, I'm interested to see how he copes. If anyone has any time spare, and I think we all do, go and check out his data on FBref over the summer.
I was literally going to say, there's a couple of better players. There's a couple of better players. There's Somerville and Rutter at Leeds.
They're not up yet, mate.
There's Adam Armstrong.
Again, I'm not going to bet on a player that's not up yet. When he's up, he will come into my thinking because he's been incredible.
No, I get you.
But I don't want to jump the gun.
At Wolves as well.
Excuse me.
He's on the way out, right? We shall see. No, I've heard a lot about him. I listened to Aaron Lagor on the Planet FPL when they went up, and he was saying that he's, as you said, added goals to his game, getting into the box a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Sammy Smodics at Blackburn, who just about stayed up, like ridiculous data.
Yeah.
But was Adam
We'll see if he
Armstrong
gets
also at
removed.
Blackburn? Was he also at Blackburn before and just loved the
Adam
shot?
Armstrong, what did used to be at Blackburn, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that we were looking at his data at one point. It's just he just took like so many shots. Like,
oh yeah, he hogs the shots. Yeah. And he's been taking a few penalties as well this season too. Obviously with Ward-Prowse gone.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's been very, very good. Loads of assists too. So fingers crossed for Sunday, and then we might get another FPL option. Although to be fair, whichever team goes up, there are a few FPL options as you hinted at with Somerville and Ruta for Leeds as well. So yeah, we'll see.
But we know if Saints go up, then you buy Darwin Nunez on the week that he's playing Saints because he can do those goals. Right, we digress. Player of the season, Palmer by default.
Yeah, it's got to be. I've already given my speech on Palmer, but yeah, just absolutely incredible. We don't see this often in FPL, and you kind of forget about how special it is as the season goes on because you just become a bit numb to it. But this is a 5 million player who wasn't even starting for his team at the start of the year. Even when he moved, he wasn't starting for his team, and has ended up top point scorer. It's honestly incredible. So yeah, fair play to him. Definitely my player of the season.
Yeah, I would not be shocked. I put out a tweet just for the lols a few months ago. I think maybe it was actually last year, saying like the year is 2024, 25, and we're all also captaining Palmer. I would not be surprised if that kind of comes to pass. But I said this in the past about Sadio Mane.
Is there any chance it's one season? Any chance?
I had him as my player of the year, right? 1 year. I'm just like, well, he's now kind of put himself up there as a viable alternative to Salah. And then what happened? Well,
yeah,
you know what happened. So we'll see. He's young. He's definitely obviously got enough about him to do what he needs to do. So I'm not going to be kind of, I don't think, denigrating anything surrounding him. And it'll be really interesting to see kind of where it goes from there. I mean, with the news that we got today that Pochettino's gone, I think it'll be fascinating to see who the new manager is. Obviously, they finished very well. Is there going to be? Surely you can't look at Palmer and think, "Oh, I need to tweak this," and maybe reduce the over reliance on an individual. But it's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is worth noting just very quick, and it's almost irrelevant now because Poch is gone, but when they started playing better football towards the end of the season, they weren't quite as reliant on Palmer. He was still getting good data and decent numbers, but there was a more well-rounded element to Chelsea's build-up play, and they were finding goals from other areas. So it wasn't just Palmer FC by the end. But yeah, we'll see. This will all change yet again come next season. So I say he'll still be relevant though, surely.
Yeah, straight on top of the season next year. Before he'd be amazing, and he's done a Rashford.
Yeah.
Well, that's the season that was, I think. Yeah, there we go, Sam. I don't think we've got time for any business. We've got over 90 minutes.
Yeah, yet again, in classic fashion, of course, we had to. Just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of you that have listened this season, and to you, Tom, as well, for letting me come on the pod this year. I've really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to get going for next season already. And yeah, there's not a week that goes by that I don't really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you, and thank you to all the listeners as well for putting up with my ramblings all season long. In the meantime, for the final time in the 23-24 season, we have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on X at WGTA_FPL, or myself at FPL Pricey. Instagram and Threads, it'll be WGTA.FPL and FPL Pricey on there. And if you did enjoy the pod, for one last time, if you could please follow us on those social channels. But also, if you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, or give us a like and subscribe to us on YouTube again, that'll be incredibly helpful. And of course, it means that you won't miss out on any of the content at the start of next season when we come back to start doing the shows in the preseason as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam. Yes, I've made many terrible decisions this year, but having you on is not one of them. That's for sure. I hope you enjoyed the pods. Thank you so much for your support this season. Do sit back, enjoy the Euros and Euro Fantasy if you are playing that. I don't think we will be. If you've got fantasy juice left to do that, then go wild, but it's not definitely not going to be me, that's for sure. I don't think it'll be you either. We'll be back in, I suspect, June time, whenever the game sort of reopens. I think I'll do Talisman Theory, so watch out for that. And I will do something else like Risen during the summer, but I don't think we'll do anything else just because young baby, I've got loads of stuff going on in my personal life, etc., etc. But yeah, we'll be back very, very soon. This season more than anything, though, we hope we assisted you. Have a great summer.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?